Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Accardi with Liongard. Really excited about having my first podcast here with the Lion's Den. Ultimately, we've got some great women in tech that we're going to be talking to. So super excited to be talking to a good friend, someone who's been an advocate in the channel for women for so long, Chris Blackman, Director of Partner Marketing at AvePoint. Chris, welcome to the Lion's Den.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
So I've known you in so many different ways and roles throughout the years, whether it was the MSP 501 or again, just working with other women and just leaders in technology over the years. Just want to start out by asking you, you're a woman in technology. How have you dealt with creating an inclusive and supportive environment for your teams as you've been driving innovation and empowering others in this industry?
Yeah, I think the most important thing any leader can do is lead by example, right? So making sure that as you are working to build an inclusive environment, you are serving as a role model for others so that those mandates trickle down within the organization, right? Communication, super important. Being able to have those regular touch points with your team so you can really hear, what's going on and any pain points that they have, any blockers you can help remove. And I think that's something that as women, we are very well equipped to do. Women tend to be better communicators in a lot of ways than men are. We are just have that empathy and that ability to make people feel at ease in that conversation. Collaboration, making sure that you're putting people within your teams together to work on projects together. Even if they're just small, you want to make sure that people's points of view are being digested and they're being heard so that everybody feels heard, everyone feels included.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And it's so hard to do. I think, we sometimes emphasize how important that communication skill is and being heard is and making people feel that way. What do they say? It's not how it's not what you do that makes people ultimately endear to you. It's how you make them feel. And if you
Yeah.
make them feel like they've been heard, and that you act on some of the feedback that you get, you certainly get a team that's feeling much more empowered to drive innovation from my perspective. So,
And I think that's a good point that you just brought up is it's not just about hearing what your team has to say, but acting on it, right? It's just like with customers, right? So, we ask them, what could we be doing better? And then we don't do those things, then, we lose their trust. It's the same thing that happens with our team members, right? We lose their trust if they are open enough to give us some candid feedback and then we don't do anything with it, then that loses trust.
oh, it's such a good point. I'm a person who really believes one of our core values is act with an outrageous sense of urgency. And it's action that matters. Words, I found in the technology world are, leveraged highly, and there's not enough action and sense of urgency. So, something that we're really pushing on. Do you think that, and I'll throw this out to you, do you think sense of urgency and acting with a sense of urgency is an important core value for women leaders to drive around?
I do. I think it doesn't come as naturally to us as it may to men. And the reason I say that is because we tend to think things through. We tend to like a plan of action and, to have all the, I's dotted and T's crossed and your project plan laid out and all of that before you actually getting started. It's like what's the statistic, Michelle? When women are applying for a job, they don't feel qualified unless they have 100% of the requirements. But when men do it, they're like, "Oh, I got 60% of these. That's fine." It kind of reminds me of that, right?
Yeah,
At some point,
absolutely.
you got to just act.
Yeah, so I that's something that I have really tried to put into place at Liongard and actually at former environments that I've been a leader in. I just think it's so important to take steps forward, and that those steps forward might be planning actions, but moving with that sense of urgency, I think, um, is what can make us more effective leaders. Um, Sometimes being too careful, too reserved, um, can make companies feel like they're stale and not innovating to their employees and to their end constituents, if you're not sort of working in that sort of faster pace. So it's interesting just to see how women and men deal with those things differently, for sure. Um, and then I would ask you, what do you think's the connection between the unique challenges that women are facing in tech, and the solutions that women bring to the field?
Um, okay, so I think advocacy is a big thing. We see it working well within our own lives, within our own careers, when we have mentors or sponsors that help us advance within our careers. So if we can turn around and pay that back to the industry, pay that back to the up and coming leaders, I think that's really powerful. I also think, and Michelle, you and I have been members of many different organizations together. And I think building those external networks within the industry is so important, especially in channel, because it's such a relationship industry. It's small, everyone knows everyone else. And so being able to form those relationships, I mean, I have gotten multiple jobs from introductions that women in my network have made for me, and I just can't tell you how much I appreciate and value those relationships and those networks. And I think as we bring young women into grooming them for leadership, exposing them to those networks early on can be a super powerful strategy.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, but I do think it's actually one of the unique challenges we have as women. So the built-in networks aren't necessarily there that pull you up in an organization. So for me, I, have always found it somewhat challenging that there weren't women pulling me up along the way when I was a younger female executive. Um, I think it's getting better, with these types of organizations that are coming together and with women like you who are leading that charge. So, in terms of bridging that gap, do you think, um, that those organizations are the best way to do that? How do you ensure that everyone's contributions are valued when you're actually in those organizations? What are your thoughts there?
So I think that we have some strong women networking groups within the channel. We've got Alliance of Channel Women. We've got the Women in Tech Network. We've got the new Advancing Leadership Network coming out of JS Group. And so we've got some opportunities to really dive in and build those relationships. But there's always more we can do, right? And I think that, again, keeping in mind your experience and what you wanted to see as you were coming up the career ladder, and then making sure that we're giving those same opportunities to the up and coming female leaders within our organizations or just within the industry, I think is really powerful. You always want to build on what's come before. You always want to do things a little bit better. So if we can mentor, if we can sponsor, if we could even just make introductions between women and, help support them in their career goals, I think that really goes a long way.
Oh, it does. But, I think it's more than just for the young women leaders. I look around, there aren't enough women in C-level positions, in the channel. And then if you get more specific in the MSP channel, which we serve, I look around and I say, where do the MSP C-level women, where do they go to make sure that they're getting the care and feeding, for themselves as leaders? When I was a CEO at an MSP dealing with, you know, how to integrate the business, how to deal with my personal life as well as my business life, how to manage that when you're on the road. 30 weeks out of the year. Ultimately, I didn't necessarily feel like I had the right peer group when I was at that point in my life. So one of the things that we're starting with a group of vendor women in the C-level is a new group called MSP Mavens that's really focused on the C-level MSP leader. So we're really excited to partner with some of these other women's networking groups that are more focused on the I'll say the coming up type of leaders, to have a place for the leaders to have a peer group that are women. So we're launching that at RoarCon, our big new user conference for Liongard that's happening July 23rd to the 25th in Frisco, Texas. So we're going to be meeting, I think, at 2:15 on the 25th. We'd love to have you if you are available. We'd love to have you come and be a part of it.
Yeah, I would love to learn more about this. I agree with you. It's important for us to be able to form those relationships, with peers so that we can learn from each other, exchange best practices, see what's working and what's not, and just have that environment to, discuss leadership tactics and techniques.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I just didn't, when I looked around, I didn't see that I had enough of that. When I was leading my MSP and now leading a company that sells into that channel, I just think if we can give back in that way, and support, I think it's going to be a real win. And ultimately, that's one of the things that I was thinking about as a way to, fill and bridge the gap. But do you think there are other ways that we can bridge the gap of the challenges of being a woman in leadership in a technology company? I mean, is it all peer networking, or are there other things that we should be doing in terms of, how we drive our businesses forward?
No, it's definitely not all networking. It's a big part of it, but I think active listening, people talk about this a lot, but I don't think a lot of people have the tools to really put that in place. So making sure, like we were talking about earlier, you're not just hearing that feedback, but you're actually going to act upon it. And you're listening, and understanding and making sure that you understand what's going on within your workforce. And that's really, what we're talking about is EQ, right? We're talking about emotional intelligence, and that can be hard, a hard skill to learn, I have found. And I have fallen prey to this, is that I don't know if it's because I'm a woman or if it's because I'm just Chris Blackman, but I tended in my early career to get too personal at work and form not just work friendships, but, deep friendships with people, with everyone I met, right? And that's great, but the problem that arises from that is when you're a leader, is that you have to be able to make decisions that are best for the business without taking that friendship so much into account, right? Like, we've got to make the hard decisions. So it's a fine line to walk there. And I think being emotionally intelligent enough to know which side of that line you need to be on as a leader is something that you really just learn through experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I tend to form fast bonds just like you do, Chris, and it is a challenge. One of the things that I have, espoused to, and I don't know, I'm sure you do too, but I sort of take a radical candor approach to transparency. And anyone who works with me, whether they're a partner or an employee, from my perspective, I'm always going to do the thing that's right for the business. But I'm going to tell the people, here's what you're accountable for. This is what you're getting judged on. And ultimately, you will succeed or fail based on those metrics and
Mm.
guidelines, not based on personal relationship. Unfortunately, we've all had to do it where we've had to let go of someone whom we like and care about. But when you've been radically candor, when you've had that great transparency with someone around, here's the things you're accountable for, it hopefully doesn't create stress for you in other areas. It's funny though, it's not always easy to do that as a woman. To you want to
Mhm.
keep those friendships, you want to keep the relationships intact. But I think if you use metrics as a way to focus the relationship,
Mhm.
then it
Yeah,
can
no, I love
make it a
that.
little easier.
Yeah, I love that. And Michelle, one thing I will always say about you is that you say it like it is. You then talk about radical candor. I think it's not just within your organization that you have that quality, and something that I've appreciated as a friend with you. When I call you and ask for advice on something, or just to get your input, you've always just given it to me straight.
Well, and I hope, and obviously we've got a pretty strong bond. So I love that you think that that's a good quality. Some people don't, but that's okay. But in any case, um, so would you say that there are specific strategies you think women leaders can use to cultivate those strong personal relationships and communication skills? Is there something that you feel like the way to not cross the line? Like I said, I told you metrics are sort of my way, but are there ways
Mhm.
that you think to help create those strong interpersonal relationships but not cross a line?
I love having regular touch points with my team members, both, my supervisors as well as, anyone who's on my team. I think being able to track progress on a certain, program or initiative by having those regular, whether it's a weekly scrum meeting or bi-weekly deep dive, or, whatever it is, being able to kind of track that progress by having those regular touch points is really critical for me. Again, it all comes back to that communication, and then learning conflict resolution, learning how to be the mediator, how to be the one who makes the hard decisions, how to get teams to work well together and bridge any gaps that might be happening, whether it's in terms of process or personalities or policies. Just being able to help team members reach a consensus amongst themselves so that the team is working cohesively and all towards that same goal, instead of working at cross purposes with one another.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Although I just read something really interesting, that the CEO of Broadcom says that he does no one-on-ones. Now he has 55 direct reports. That probably might be a reason why he
That
can't.
probably plays
But
into it.
it's interesting to me that, I mean, obviously he's male. And
Mhm.
I just wonder if there's our view on, hey, we need to have these touch points, we need to have these agile tech, if it's something that we women leaders can lean into more, and that does create the deeper, or again, is it more of this efficient approach where everything gets pushed to your down level leadership within an organization, which is better? I personally agree with you that it's I think touch points are really, really good. But it's just an interesting thing that I'm seeing in the industry right now, where some leaders at very large organizations are taking a different approach.
Yeah, I just can't imagine leading a large organization in a silo. If you're not talking to your employees, then how do you have your finger on the pulse of what's really going on within an organization? Again, that communication is so critical to being an effective leader, in my opinion, anyway. I mean, he seems to have done very well for himself. So maybe I'm not the person to judge, but yeah, I can't imagine not having those conversations and still being able to effectively lead a team.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like I said, it was just an interesting article I had read this week on that topic. Um, so how do you think you build resilience into teams? So yeah, because we all hit challenges, right? There's always some problem that you didn't expect to come up, and foster that collaboration. In Because look, we have diverse environments. It's not just women that we're working with, right? We're working probably with far more men. So how do you teach this resilience into teams?
I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but these interpersonal relationships and communication skills, if if an employee knows the direction that leadership wants to take the business, then if they have that vision in their head, then even if, one initiative fails or they mess up in one area, then it's easier for them to bounce back and get back on track because they're bought into the overall vision, right? Leaders who communicate effectively can really inspire that confidence so that, people can pick themselves up, dust themselves off, and get right back to work. When they're operating without all of the information, with a lack of transparency, then it's a lot easier to get caught up in your mistakes instead of keeping your eye on the prize.
Yeah, I totally agree. 100% agree. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today on the inaugural Lion's Den podcast. It's been so great to have you. I am going to rope you into MSP Mavens, and you're going to help talk to us and teach us more about those great interpersonal relationships and communication skills. I think that's one of the things that's direly needed in the channel, in the MSP space. How do you communicate and operate in a challenging environment and have resilience? I think is absolutely through those communication skills, and you absolutely have them, Chris, in spades. So
Yeah,
thanks.
I'd love to get involved. This sounds really cool. I can't wait to learn more.
Yeah, well, you will. So it's going to happen again at RoarCon, which is Liongard's inaugural MSP event, July 23rd to the 25th at Frisco, Texas, at the Dallas Star, which is the Cowboys training facility.
Yeah.
We also have Eric O'Neill, who is going to be our keynote speaker. So if you've ever watched the movie Breach, that was based on his story. He was a cybersecurity FBI agent who took down the largest mole in the FBI's history, a Russian operative inside our own FBI, Robert Hansen. Phenomenal story. I have to ask him whether or not he chose Ryan Philippe to play his part in the movie. That's my big question. But really, really interesting, great content. Some of the best speakers from the cybersecurity world and MSP world. So yeah, super excited to be launching MSP Mavens there as well.
I can't wait to see it happen.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks, Michelle.